Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're unpacking a really painful reality that honestly, way too many of us face in relationship dynamics. We're drawing on some absolutely brilliant insights inspired by Brené Brown's work, and we're going to look at why certain relationships just leave us feeling totally drained, constantly off balance, and, well, stuck. We're breaking down this whole psychological phenomenon known as intermittent reinforcement, along with the super subtle but toxic practice of breadcrumbing. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's kick this off with a really tough question. And yeah, this might hit a little too close to home for some of you. Have you ever felt profoundly cherished one day, only to feel literally invisible and ignored the very next? You know the drill. One minute, you are the absolute center of their universe. And then the next, you're just staring at your phone, agonizing over whether you did something wrong. You're left trying to figure out where the heck that loving partner went. It's a completely destabilizing emotional whiplash that can leave literally anyone questioning their own sanity.
And right here, this perfectly illustrates the core trap we fall into. When we're in the thick of it, we get this intense high followed by a just crushing low, and what do? We romanticize it. We sell ourselves this myth that our love is just, passionate and complex. We think, oh, we just have a super intense connection. But the reality? The reality is way darker. It's not complex love, folks. It is a calculated manipulation tactic. And really, recognizing the difference between a tough patch in a relationship and a manipulative trap, that is step one toward actually reclaiming your peace of mind.
Which brings us to Section 1, the hot and cold trap and the science behind it. Let's dig into exactly why we get stuck.
So, why is it so incredibly hard to just walk away when we're being treated like an afterthought by someone who runs hot and cold? Well, I need you to hear this. It is not because you're weak, and it definitely isn't a lack of willpower. There are deeply ingrained psychological mechanics at play here. This whole setup, it's literally designed to keep you waiting, hoping, and questioning your own worth. Think about a gambler at a slot machine. They don't win every time, right? But that random, unpredictable payout, that's what keeps them pulling the lever, totally convinced the big win is just one pull away. When a partner runs hot and cold, those cold periods systematically erode your self-esteem. You end up surviving on absolute scraps, just desperately waiting for the next tiny breadcrumb of affection to validate your worth.
And here is the exact clinical reason you feel like you just can't break away. It's called intermittent reinforcement. It's a psychological trap where your brain becomes quite literally addicted to inconsistent affection and empty apologies. Now, what's fascinating is this dynamic wasn't even discovered by a relationship therapist. Nope, it was psychologist B.F. Skinner, and he was studying hungry rats in a box. Seriously, he figured out that if a rat got a food pellet every single time it pressed a lever, it would eat until it was full and then just chill out. But if the pellet only dropped randomly, like just sometimes, that rat would press the lever frantically, obsessively, basically forever. And it's exactly the same for us. If someone was awful to you 100% of the time, you'd be out the door. But because the affection is unpredictable, your brain gets hooked on the instability. The inconsistency is literally the glue that creates the addiction.
And that mechanic builds this wildly predictable, deeply addictive loop. So first, you get that intoxicating burst of love and attention. Step 1, the inconsistent affection that gets you on the hook. Then comes the inevitable pullback. They go cold or treat you poorly, which leads to step 2. They eventually offer an empty apology. You know the kind, right? It sounds absolutely amazing in the moment, but there's zero real behavioral change behind it, which dumps you right into step 3, waiting and hoping. You hold so tight to that apology, just waiting in quiet desperation for the good times to come back. And then, the whole cycle just repeats, trapping you in this relentless loop of temporary relief and prolonged desperation.
All right, moving on to Section 2, the 4 silent signs of breadcrumbing. Let's look at how to actually spot this manipulation in your day-to-day life.
Now, these everyday behaviors, they are super subtle at first. It almost always kicks off with being deeply cherished, temporarily, of course, which is exactly why the sudden shift to being completely invisible is so incredibly jarring. Without any warning whatsoever, they pull back, they leave you on read, and you just feel entirely alone. And this sudden pivot, it creates those highly unpredictable hot and cold cycles. There's zero rhythm to it, no logical reason why they're super loving one day and totally distant the next. And here's the kicker. When you finally get fed up enough to complain, or maybe even try to leave, bam, that's when the reliance on empty apologies kicks into high gear. They toss you a crumb, a perfectly worded apology without any actual substance, purely designed to keep you on the hook. This constant back and forth oscillation is exactly what keeps you trapped.
Let's get to the most important part. Section 3, breaking the toxic cycle. It is time to reclaim your agency.
Okay, you have to stop waiting for someone to magically change. I know this is probably the hardest truth to swallow in these dynamics, but I'm saying this to you with so much empathy. Moving from victimhood to agency means you have got to let go of the fantasy. We hold on so desperately to the potential of who someone could be, or maybe who they pretended to be on that very first date, but you cannot build a healthy, stable life where you're holding your breath for a spontaneous, magical transformation in a partner who consistently chooses to breadcrumb you. You absolutely have to look at the reality of their actions today, like right this second.
It essentially boils down to this incredibly empowering call to action. Walk away from conditional, unstable love. You've got to take your power back. Love should never ever be some reward that gets dangled in front of you only when you jump through the right psychological hoops. It shouldn't come with harmful conditions, and it certainly shouldn't leave you living in a constant, buzzing state of anxiety and self-doubt. You absolutely deserve consistency. Walking away from an unstable situation, that is not a failure, it is the ultimate, necessary act of self-respect.
So, wrapping this up, I really have to ask you, are you ready to stop accepting breadcrumbs and walk away today? Because the confusion and the pain you're feeling, it's not your fault. It's a well-documented, incredibly powerful psychological trap. But breaking free from it, well, that is entirely in your hands. It is time to stop waiting around for crumbs and start demanding the consistency you actually deserve. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, true affection never leaves you guessing.